Hey everyone, and welcome to the Weekly Marketer Podcast. Every single week, we interview deep dive experts in one of the many fields of marketing to drop huge knowledge bombs from the best of the best and teach you how to take your marketing skills to the next level. This is episode 001, and we're interviewing Colin McIntosh, who ran an absolutely massive campaign on Indiegogo for his brand Sheets and Giggles, raised a ton of money. How much exactly, Colin?
Well, in our first 30 days, it was $204,000 for Sheets and Giggles, and then for the first 45 days, which was the full crowdfunding, it was about $261,000. It actually ended up being the biggest Indiegogo crowdfund ever for bed sheets, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. So Colin is a crowdfunding master, absolutely promoted the heck out of this. And Sheets and Giggles itself is a very, very cool company. So Colin, I'm going to have you introduce yourself, tell everybody a little bit about your background, and then, how Sheets and Giggles, and then we'll move into kind of crowdfunding, which is what this episode's about.
Yeah, so I founded Sheets and Giggles in October 2017. Didn't really begin work on it, I think, in earnest until January 1st or 2nd of this year, just because I was, getting things up and running, getting the website up, trademarks, that sort of thing, getting a logo created, really basic stuff for the first couple months. And then January was when we really started sprinting towards our Indiegogo in May. And so we spent about 10 weeks worth of preparation time gathering emails for interested parties leading up to the launch. And it's been really successful so far, fingers crossed, and knock on wood that it continues that way. And we're actually shipping out our first 5,000 pre-orders this month, which we're really excited about. And then prior to Sheets and Giggles, I was working on another company here in Denver, very different wearable technology company. The only similarity between the two is probably that they're both physical products, which I think a lot of people don't really work in the physical product space these days. They're pretty much all software if you're starting up a company. And so that was a really interesting experience. About the last 3 years working on that, we raised about $6 million. We also did 2 other crowd funds during that time for new product launches. We were also a Techstars company, if any viewers in the audience are familiar with Techstars and that accelerator. So it's been an interesting last 3 or 4 years in my career.
That's absolutely crazy and a wild ride. How did you kind of get into all of this?
All of this meaning the startup scene?
Yeah, how'd you get into the startup scene? Like, how did you? So you founded 2 companies, both of which have raised quite a bit of money, whether from VC or crowdfunding or some combination of both. How'd your kind of career get started? How'd you get into building these physical products?
Yeah, so I was actually prior to S&G, I'm a first-time founder. I wasn't the founding team of my last company, though technically not a co-founder. So I just want to be accurate there. So one of the reasons I started S&G is because I really wanted a company pretty much all of my own. But really, I started to get into startups back in 2013. I had started my career at a hedge fund in Connecticut called Bridgewater Associates, which is actually the largest hedge fund in the world, 170 billion under management last time I checked. And I that sucked. I got fired in like 6 months, and that was like the worst corporate experience that you could possibly have to start your career. And so right away, I got kind of a distaste for larger companies that already had an existing system and bureaucracy in place. Not that Bridgewater is not a great place for a lot of people. It just wasn't really for me. And so I then went to a little 15-person recruiting company, ironically the company that hired me at Bridgewater. And that's when I got into tech recruiting, had a few startups that were clients, really great startups, well-funded, and some smaller shops that were revenue funded. And it was recruiting for big companies, small companies. And that's really when I got into startups, is when I was recruiting for some startup clients. I really loved the pitch that I could tell people of why they should join this company, why they should take a chance, why the equity and the options were worth so much for different clients of mine. And I actually drank the Kool-Aid so much that I joined one of my clients out in Seattle. I hired myself as a business development consultant for one of the open roles that I had. And so that was the original sort of first startup I ever worked on. And then from there, I wrote the business plan for my last company, Revelar, which went through Techstars Boulder 2015. We did a Kickstarter in April 2015 ahead of that Techstars experience. And then that Techstars experience in general was really what got me to the point where I'd say I'm part of the startup scene in Denver, or however you want to phrase it. And that's what really kicked off my professional experience with my own companies.
That's incredible. That's a really great journey and kind of an interesting one too. I think that there's a
weird journey, yes.
Yeah.
super weird journey.
Well, but
Yeah.
that's good though, right? Like, I mean, there is no like one size fits all, especially for, doing your own thing. Anybody can, if you're willing to put in the work and you're willing to learn and you're willing to, kind of and find good mentorship and things like that, you can kind of pursue your passion, if you will. So,
Yeah, I think the mentorship piece is really understated. I think if it weren't for Techstars and the Techstars network, I wouldn't have gotten I'd call it like an MBA type of education I got while at my last company. And one of the companies in particular that's really been a great mentor to me has been Spiro, which makes the BB-8 droid. If anybody knows the little smartphone controlled Star Wars drones, the droids, that those guys are incredible. They're based out in Boulder, and they've been fantastic mentors for me on everything from sales to marketing to retail to packaging, logistics. They've just been fantastic.
That's amazing. So kind of
also a Techstars company, hence the connection.
Is Techstars paying you or
no? I just they're great, and I'd recommend anyone.
I've had nothing but positive experiences interacting with people in the Techstars network. So
yeah, they should be. They paid me enough in mentorship, so that's yeah.
Absolutely, and free pizza, right? Yeah. So kind of focusing in a little bit on the crowdfunding, right? Let's just focus in on just this last campaign that you did for Sheets and Giggles, right? And Sheets and Giggles is, as you said, right? It's a sheet company, did some really cool branding stuff. They're made out of eucalyptus, very high quality product and all that. But the Kickstarter, or I'm sorry, not the Kickstarter, the crowdfunding on Indiegogo actually like really kind of got your name out there and got like the capital that you need and everything else. And a lot of the people that are, follow daily marketing have been asking about crowdfunding specifically. So talk to me about those 10 weeks, talk to me about how to do a crowdfunding campaign the right way, and what are some things that people don't think about, and, kind of at a high level, I guess, what's the right way to do crowdfunding?
Yeah, it's interesting. I know that you've got your own subreddit. What is it? Give yourself a
daily marketing. Daily marketing. That's what this is for.
No, I think it's an awesome sub. I subscribed maybe a month or so ago, and
hopefully I haven't been doing too bad.
No, seriously, I love it. You actually give me a lot of new ideas on that sub. But I actually did an AMA on the entrepreneur subreddit about 2 or 3 months ago, when we were in the middle of our Indiegogo, and I got a ton of questions about crowdfunding as well. So I know it's on a lot of people's minds. I think the reason why a lot of people ask about it is because it's kind of the first time they'll ever be able to test their idea, and they can do it without a lot of capital risk and without a lot of investment up front, which is great. It's a really awesome platform, and I think a lot of people have had positive experiences with Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and a lot of people have had negative experiences with them, maybe when they've been burned by a brand or scammed or somebody hasn't delivered. I think a lot of founders, they never go, very few. I mean, there's bad actors, right? But I think few people go into a crowdfund with the idea that they're not going to deliver their product. I think that most people go in, eyes wide open, really excited, getting ready to start a business with a ton of enthusiasm. And what happens is they raise $100,000 or $200,000, and they realize that for their idea to even come to life, they need $2 million in working capital to produce a single unit. They haven't thought about necessarily the design, the tooling costs, testing, manufacturing runs. They don't have an idea of what their COGS are going to be. So maybe they undercharge on their campaign instead of charge the right price. In the case of something like, I think the Coolest Cooler is a great example of this. Maybe they don't charge enough money for shipping, and they need to go back to their backers in the future and charge more money in order to actually deliver on time, or deliver at all. So I think the number one thing that I'd say is for people to understand the economics of the business that they're trying to start. Don't take other people's money before you're confident that you can deliver, at least on those pre-orders. In our case, I knew that if we could get $100,000 in pre-orders, we'd be able to deliver our initial manufacturing runs. And we had already done design, testing, and development of our product from January through April of this year before we ever took a single dollar on May. In fact, we ordered our product, our first 10,000 units, to be manufactured in early April for an August delivery timeline. So a lot of people, number one advice I'd say is to understand the economics of the business, and then also understand the delivery timeline for the business. So many people are going to start a campaign in May and say they can deliver by August or September, and they will not realize that length of time it takes to design, test, and manufacture a product. And I worry about people getting their brand started up on the wrong foot, delivering 4 or 5, 6 months later than their promised initial timeline.
That's actually really interesting. I think a lot of people, they look at crowdfunding for, this kind of wonderful thing that it is. And in many cases, it is that. And like you said, they kind of go, nobody goes in with bad intent, but like you kind of have to think of these pitfalls and things like that. So that's really fantastic perspective to start off with. So as you were setting up this crowdfunding campaign, right, over this period of 10 weeks, like what does that actually look like? Kind of nuts and bolts, right? Like what sort of things do you have to get ready for the crowdfunding campaign? How do you set up the page? What sort of optimizations and things like that do you have to look at? What's the advertising marketing component of that? Could you dive into a little bit of that, like what that timeline looks like and what sort of activities you have to be doing in order to have a successful crowdfunding campaign?
Yeah, I think that the best way to think about it is, so first from a time perspective, you want to budget at least 8 weeks to get ready. We budgeted 10. First and foremost, we built out a brand identity map so that way we could guide our marketing voice from day one. I don't think enough people do that, and their brand voice kind of goes all over the place. It's the founder's voice, it's the company's voice, it's the customer service person's voice, it's the marketing team's voice. You got to have a brand identity map from day one to guide that and decide what type of brand voice you're going to have. And then from there, built out the website, wrote copy for a few core pages, FAQs, landing pages to capture emails. And then we started to talk to crowdfunding agencies. And I think that this is something that is really difficult for a lot of people because there's a lot of sharks out there. The sharks are less on the founder side and more on the agency side because it is a little bit of the Wild West with crowdfunding still, even today. And there's tons of agencies that will tell you, yep, we take, X thousand dollars up front to get started, and then we take 30% of sales, whatever it is. What they don't tell you is that if you don't sell or you don't give them the indicators that you're going to sell as much as they think, they'll drop you like a hot, like a hot coal. And so not only that, but those setup fees are oftentimes non-refundable and just a way for them to goose their sales. I mean, there's no setup involved with an agency aside from actual marketing expenditures. So a lot of times I want to be very clear with an agency about, what you're going to use our initial setup dollars for. It should be for things like third-party software in order to capture emails, send emails. You want to understand what their setup process actually looks like, what portion of that initial fee is going to be used for advertisements, how they plan to capture emails. And really this is all revolving around the number one goal of preparation, and that's to gather emails. So the number one rule of thumb is figure out how much you want to raise. Let's say it's $100,000. Budget 3%-ish conversion on your email list. 1% is really bad, 5% is really good. So 3 is something you can tend to really bank on because these are people that have actively given you their emails and that are interested. And then work backwards from there. And if your average price on your Indiegogo or your Kickstarter is going to be $100 per backer, and you want to raise $100,000, that means that you need 1,000 backers. And generally speaking, you want to gather at least 30% of your total backers in the first 24 to 72 hours of your campaign. And that's almost entirely going to come off your email. So working backwards from there, I want to make $100,000. That means I want 1,000 backers. That means that I want 300 of those backers, 30% in the first 24 to 48 to 72 hours. And that means that I need 300 backers from my email list. If my email list converts at a 3% clip, that means that 300 backers is going to be 3% of what? And that's 10,000 emails. So from there, and by the way, that math is literally exactly how we set our goal of getting 10,000 emails before we launched. And we actually ended up gathering 11,000 emails in about 8 weeks worth of running interest ads on Facebook. And so really, I think to sum it all up, the initial nuts and bolts are goal setting, brand voice setting, getting your initial copy and collateral and landing pages set up, and then starting to run Facebook ad campaigns in targeted demographics to those landing pages. And a lot of times agencies will have email lists of past campaigns that they can use to build lookalike audiences. And that way you can get people that are early adopters seeing your initial Facebook ads, signing up for that big day one backing event on Indiegogo. And you really want to snowball from there. So day one is super paramount.
Yeah, so that's actually really interesting. So, as you know, I spend a lot of my time doing Facebook ads and things like that, and I've done some stuff in music where music it's really all about the launch as well because once you get that momentum, the algorithm, I guess you will, ends up taking over, right? And so it's a similar situation with like a crowdfunding where when the staff of the actual crowdfunding company sees like a rapidly rising project, they want to kind of keep that going. Is that kind of a fair assessment of what's happening or no?
I think so. I think that so one of the things that I learned the hard way is, and this is mostly speculation. I don't have insight into their algorithms, but I think that Kickstarter and Indiegogo actually reward people, and I should say Indiegogo specifically because I didn't do a Kickstarter this time around, that blow out their goal on day one. And it's more about percentage raised than it is dollar amount raised. So, for example, we set a goal of $25,000 publicly. Internally, we wanted to make $100,000, but 25 was kind of our public facing goal because we knew how the algorithms worked on Indiegogo, and we didn't think that we'd hit $100,000 in day one, but 25 we were pretty certain, and we ended up making $44,000 on day one, so almost 200%, which is great. Looking back, if I had set that initial public goal at $10,000 or $15,000, I would have done 3 to 4.5x. So I would have been 300 to 450% funded on day one. And we actually probably would have been the number one trending topic on Indiegogo instead of just the number two or number three trending topic. And it's kind of weird because you wouldn't think that they would do it according to funding percentage. You think they do it according to dollars raised because they make their money as a percentage of dollars raised, not a percentage of how many multiples of your goal you've made. And so it's kind of weird that they have it set up like that. But for example, there was another sheet campaign that launched 2 days before us with a $10,000 goal, and they made $30,000 in their first day, and they were trending ahead of us, even though we had made $44,000 on our first day because they 3x their public goal instead of us where we just 2x our public goal.
Now that is interesting. I wonder if they do that just because projects come in so many different sizes, right? Where you have like, somebody that's trying to do an ebook or something like that, and they want to try and get parity. Otherwise, it would just be video game after video game.
Yeah, I think that might be true. I think that it's there's so many different projects on there that maybe percentage of public goal is the best way to make it all else equal. But yeah, so that's something that people should be considerate of is don't sandbag your public goal, because if you set your public goal like 10 grand and you raise 25 grand and that's not enough for you to get to market, your customers won't understand that. They will say, I don't understand what you're telling me. You didn't raise enough money to go to market because your goal was 10,000 and you blew it out of the water at 25. So you can't sandbag your goal because then you're setting yourself up for really high expectations from your customers when you blow it out of the water. But at the same time, people need to understand that how much you trend on the homepage and that sort of thing is going to be based on if you can blow out your goal on day one.
Interesting. Okay, so I like that. So because I have heard common advice is like, oh, definitely go under so that you can go over your goal so that it looks like it's super funded. And it sounds like you're saying, be measured if you're going to go that direct.
Be measured, yeah. Be measured because if you sandbag it and you do 5x a bad goal and you can't deliver, or you can't deliver on time, or you need more money, or whatever it is,
Right.
people won't get that because they don't see behind the scenes. And so you can't be dishonest with people. You got to set a goal that's actually ethically something that you can deliver on. But at the same time, let's say that I can deliver on 25,000 and I can also deliver on 100,000. I'm going to set my goal at 25,000 because I know the difference between the two in terms of appearance and algorithm. But I wouldn't go as low as something like 15 or 10 for S&G because that's not something that we could have delivered on.
That's fascinating. So what would you say that, I guess kind of going along with this, you talked a lot about the things you sort of need to be doing and the kind of agencies that you look for. Just a quick touch on that point. Like you were talking about how a lot of them will ask for an upfront money and then we'll take a percentage on the back end. And you were talking about the right way to vet that. Would it be fair to kind of characterize that as the right way to vet it is somebody that's charging the upfront money should really just be to cover cost for the agency and that they make all of their upside on a successful campaign? Or I'm just trying to understand.
Totally. 100%. So think about it like this. If I engage with an agency and I know that I want 10 weeks worth of prep time before our launch, and then I know that our campaign is going to be 45 days, so another 6 weeks. So that's 16 weeks total we're going to be engaging at least, probably a little bit before and a little bit after. So let's call it 20 weeks total. So about 5 months. If that's the engagement length for your agency, then a standard agency worth their salt is probably going to want to, charge you something like, so they get paid out maybe $5,000 a month. So something like 25,000 total dollars. So if somebody on the front end is charging you, let's say $2,000, and your campaign is only projected to make $100,000, and let's say they want to charge you, 20% on the back end or whatever it is, that's probably what they'll end up charging you, because they're gonna look at the $100,000 potential and say, all right, that's 20 grand on the back end for 20%, 2 grand on the front end, $22,000, 4 or 5 months worth of work. That's $4,000 or $5,000 a month for the agency. So that's as a founder, you have to do that math too and understand whether you're overpaying or underpaying. And you also want to do the math from a CPA perspective. So if I'm going to do $100 as my average backer value, for example, and I want to make $100,000, that's 1,000 backers, and somebody wants to charge me 20% on the back end or 10%, I should be able to do that math in my head easily when I'm on the phone with them and be able to say, okay, well, if I pay them 20% of 100 grand, that's $20,000, 1,000 backers. In terms of CPA, it's going to be however much I'm paying for Facebook ads and Google ads and that sort of thing, plus 20 grand to this agency as part of my CPA. And so how much money am I actually going to have left over when it's all said and done per customer? And am I running a profitable, sustainable company? Am I going to turn any money around on this, or am I going to take a loss? And I think a lot of people actually end up taking losses on their crowdfunding campaigns because they don't properly calculate how much they're going to end up paying their agency on the back end.
I'm really glad you actually brought that up, the way to calculate that, because I see a lot of people just take marketing dollars out and revenue in and calling that ROI, and it's not, because there's just so many more factors that go into it. So that's really fantastic. So if you had any kind of hacks or the biggest tips that you could say, the thing that people mess up the most when it comes to crowdfunding and how to avoid it, and then kind of what you saw the biggest impact from your marketing sort of stuff, whether it was Facebook ads or email capture or what have you, I think that our listeners would really appreciate that sort of kind of practical takeaway, if you will.
Yeah, biggest pitfall, and because this is a marketing podcast, I keep the marketing because there's a mess.
Yeah, there's a lot
of pitfalls on the logistics and product side, and I can talk about that a little bit if people would be interested in that. But on the marketing side, I think the biggest pitfall goes back to the preparation. I think a lot of people think that they build this great thing and people are going to love this great thing, and then they throw it on Kickstarter, they throw it on Indiegogo with maybe 2 or 3 weeks of the preparation.
My mom said it was cool, so it should just take off right away.
That's what I mean. When you say I have an idea, and people, all your friends and family, they say, oh, what a great idea. They validate your idea. Maybe you do a little customer research, you send some emails out, get some feedback from people that you respect. That's all great. But if you throw it on Kickstarter on any given day, you're competing with thousands of other projects on Kickstarter for that real estate. And I've seen people launch and get $20 worth of funding, $50 worth of funding. Like it's, and you don't want to be that guy that's constantly, or girl on Facebook and, hitting up your friends and family, messaging them, posting your status every single day. Please fund my Kickstarter. Please fund my Indiegogo. That's nonsense. That's not a real business. That's just you asking for donations from your friends and family for your own pocket. So I think that a lot of people need to put in way more preparation time. I would say at least 8 weeks, preferably 10 weeks. The number one thing they need to focus on is email gathering. Those emails that they gather, when you blast it out to your email list, let's say you get 10,000 of them in between when you start your prep and when you end your prep, 3% of them should convert within the first 24 to 48 hours. So especially if you've kept them updated, you sent them 2 or 3 emails in the meantime, getting them hyped, getting them psyched, telling them when the launch is, so on and so forth. And those people are going to be your core customers. And you also want to get, 20, 30 family friends ready to go on day one as well. They're going to be, your core sort of first people that are going to get you your first, 20 or 30 orders along with your email list, which will then blow up for the day. But really in that first hour, that first 1 to 3 hours, you want to be on pace to hit your public goal on day one. And the power of preparation, gathering emails is going to be huge. And then also a lot of people overlook, they can use those emails not only for that first sort of go out and buy, rush, but also that first lookalike audience that they're going to build on Facebook for those people that are interested in the product.
Right, absolutely. Those are the best way of doing Facebook advertising, hands down. And just to clarify too, and I know that you wouldn't do this, but just to clarify for the listeners, don't go buy an email list. You have to get like people to genuinely opt in. You can't just spam email, 100,000 people or something like that. That's not how it works.
And also you're going to have better results if you get people to give you your email, and you're going to know, I think to go back to the biggest mistake people make, it's preparation and it's also validation. People don't validate their ideas, and what you should do before you start anything is take $1,000 or $500, right? Something that I think that every person starting a business should at least have in their bank account. And if you don't, maybe you can hustle and start a business with $0 of initial capital investment, but I don't know how reasonable or likely that is to succeed. But let's say that you take $500 or $1,000, right, before you're going to invest $5,000 or $10,000 in actually building your business, and go ahead and build a landing page, get a Shopify website, get a really cheap account for somewhere that you can build a nice, maybe it's $30 a month for something where you can build a really beautiful landing page. Get email capture set up with MailChimp, integrate it with Shopify. You spent maybe $100 at this point in time, and then run $200 or $300 worth of Facebook ads. Get some clicks, get some people landing on that page, figure out if they're converting. If they're not, shut off the spend, reconfigure the page. You want to have at least, probably 10 to 12 versions of the page anyways for A/B testing when you're sending people to different landing pages with different headers, different images, different calls to action. And then you're going to, within the first $500, you're going to know if you're onto something or not. And if you're converting emails at 1%, you're not onto something. And if you and then that should tell you that you're either really bad at marketing, which is fine. Like there's people that are terrible at things and people that are great at other things, and that you need to revamp your calls to action and your collateral and your your value prop. Or it's going to tell you that the product and the idea isn't something that people have demand for. And people will leave comments on your Facebook ads, and they'll give you that qualitative feedback as well as the quantitative feedback that comes from getting those raw numbers on the landing page. But that validation, that first $500, you got to see your cost per lead. So how much is costing you per email? Is that going to be within the budget that you have to get to that email number that we talked about earlier is crucial for your success? And if so, great, move forward with the larger spend and the larger preparation. And if not, take a step back and be willing to postpone your launch by a month in order to figure things out.
Right. Absolutely. And, this, what you're saying is such practical advice. And I think too, it's important, like if it doesn't work right away and maybe the market is saying no to your product, maybe they're just saying no to this iteration of the product. Cause I've met people that took 2, 3, 4 times of them iterating over and over on that product in order for it to actually have the value that people, kind of want to see in, like, especially when it comes to like physical products and things like that.
I'll give you a perfect example of that. I initially thought that we were going to launch not only with eucalyptus bed sheets for their sustainability aspects, 95% less water than cotton sheets, up to 30% less energy, no insecticides, no pesticides used in the cultivation of the eucalyptus trees. I thought those were going to be great value props. But then I also thought that we were going to do, and this is probably me getting ahead of myself, which is something that I think a lot of entrepreneurs do. I thought that we were going to do fun, crazy designs on the bed sheets, and that they were going to be kind of like, that nostalgic kid feeling for adults, where you're going to have cool designs that were all named after fun sleep idioms, sawing logs, and, early bird and night owl and stuff like that. And the market told me, I sent out a survey asking if they'd want those patterns or if they wanted just plain colors. And I think like 1,000 people answered the survey. This is when I had an email list that I had been building for a couple of weeks.
Right.
And they were like, no, just solid colors. We don't want, like, if you can give us the same base sheet material with solid colors that go with my bedroom at like a $10 or $20 less price, that's what we want. The designs, like maybe one day, maybe a Christmas design or something. And that was hard. I mean, I thought I had a fun idea that I wanted to do and that I personally would love. But hey, guys don't buy bed sheets, women do, and women were telling me, nope, colors, solid colors are totally fine.
Well, I'm going to tell my wife that we are having a race car bed, and
Well,
she's just going to have to deal with
I was gonna say get out of the house, yeah. And I mean,
that.
I think a lot of founders also inherently have their own biases from who they are as people, with their experiences, their gender, their age, their race. And I think that a lot of times that will cloud your decision making instead of inform your decision making. And that was really hard for me to understand early on that even though I might think something is really funny or really cool or unique, my audience is going to be 80% women, and they might think about the brand significantly differently than I do. And so I had to revamp how I spoke about the company in some ways.
It's very true. Yeah. As a marketer, you end up talking to a lot of different audiences, and it's your job to kind of go outside of yourself in order to, try and understand what matters to them, what their pain points are, what they value, and then move to cater to them. So rather than what you might personally believe.
Yeah, yes and no. I think that that's totally true. I'd also say that a lot of times the brand voice in the early going is the founder's voice. And so while you need to put yourself in the shoes of your core customer, I think a lot of people also don't realize how important their own voice is to the brand. And at the end of the day, at some point, you're going to fail or succeed based on your own voice. And people have to go into that understanding that it's a really personal thing, whether you succeed or fail.
Absolutely. That's fantastic advice. So I've got a couple of questions here. First question, and you've covered some of these to some extent or another. I've got one here that says, would crowdfunding work for local services companies?
No, I don't think so personally. I think that it depends on if you're launching something new. For example, if you were a local services company that thought that you had a new version of something, and I'm struggling to come up with a perfect and particular service, which is why my initial inclination is that it might not work. You could hyper target on Facebook. The one reason it could work is because you could hyper target people in your area with Facebook ads and with retargeting ads and other things like that, where and with amazing copy, right? Because you can say, hey, you live in Plantation, Florida, which is where I'm from originally, and you need these services for your home, and we have an incredible new way of doing it, and we're launching it in 2 months, and we want you to be a part of it. I think it'd be interesting, but I think at the end of the day, people need a service. They need it now and not a month in advance. And I think that also the benefit of the crowdfunding platform is that it's national and international. And so it does bode well for products that are more generalized and that have a wider audience than a local audience. Because if you're just going to target a local audience, the snowball effect of appearing like on the homepage of Kickstarter or Indiegogo, it doesn't do you as much good because you're going to have extremely low conversion from that wider audience.
I think that makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, next question here I'm seeing is there any offline kinds of advertising that you think would be effective for a crowdfunding campaign?
Yeah, I do actually, and I think that a lot of people. This is where we go back to the brand identity map in the beginning. Is like when you're naming your company, it's also really important. We chose Sheets and Giggles, A, because it's funny and it made us laugh, but like B, because I thought it was extremely memorable, great SEO around it, and we could do physical and podcast advertising where people see or just hear the name, and then they can go Google it, and we're going to be the first result. Or they can go on Amazon, we're going to be the first result. And they don't necessarily need to remember a URL. And I think a lot of companies, they choose names. This is kind of weird. It's a little counterintuitive. They choose names based on the URLs that they can get. When in reality, I think you should choose a name that's going to be very core to your marketing plan and to your brand plan, and then get whatever URL you want. Just make sure you're the first result for that name when people Google it, because people are going to Google you before they go to a URL. And that really powerful, memorable name when it comes to offline advertising and visual advertising, whether it's an on-campus program with student ambassadors or it's a radio campaign or whatever it is, I think those offline campaigns have way more impact if you have a memorable name. We're actually looking at direct mail right now. Although that probably wouldn't be great for crowdfunding, you got to time that perfectly. But I think that a few different options for crowdfunding that would be interesting would be something like physical advertising. One of the things that we did was we had hair bands that had the brand name on it, Sheets and Giggles, and we put those in gyms all across Denver because women forget their hair ties all the time when they're going to work out and do yoga classes and stuff. And it's just free brand name. And then, on the front of the bowl, it said, search for us on Google, and the Indiegogo and our website were like the first things that popped up.
That's amazing. That's super, super smart, and like pretty low dollar amount too, it seems.
Oh, yeah. I mean, hair bands are like, less than $1 a piece, way less than that. So,
right. That's amazing. So another question here. I run a pretty successful YouTube channel. I'm lucky I've had some videos and it went viral. How do I take and basically channel this towards a crowdfunding campaign?
Well, so this person says they run a successful YouTube channel, or they've just had some viral videos.
Yeah, they had a couple of videos that went viral on their YouTube channel. So insofar as I understand reading this, they have a hobby YouTube channel that they had some videos go viral. They got a big kind of following, and they're wondering how to take that, specifically with YouTube, I guess, to take that and kind of move that audience into a crowdfunding campaign. I mean, outside of just the obvious, which is, make a YouTube video about it.
Well, if I'm being honest, I think this person's in a fantastic position to run a crowdfunding campaign. Like if I had a YouTube channel for a hobby, right? I've got a targeted audience. And then I take that hobby, whatever it is, I build a product specifically for people in that target demographic. Maybe I solve a pain point that's common amongst people. Maybe I even source the idea to my audience and I say, what is your biggest pain point? What is your biggest problem with this hobby? What could somebody build that would solve that problem? And then get feedback from the community. So let me get a little higher level instead of I'm getting really excited about this and I'm diving too deeply into it. I'd use, because it's cool. I mean, this person's got a great opportunity in front of them. I'd use the subscribers I had to source problems and ideas with surveys and feedback and comments and that sort of thing. Then I would use that audience to then introduce the prototype to them in a video that I would shoot for that audience. I'd pair that video with a sign-up list for people who want to be notified when it's available for purchase. And that would be my initial test as to, do we have a business on our hands here, or do we just have something that people aren't willing to pay for? So I'd use it for feedback, ideas, problem solving, and then validation of the idea and introduction of the prototype. And then I'd use it to launch the actual campaign itself when it was time for the campaign. And I think the fact that it's a targeted niche audience it bodes extremely well for this person.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I actually, just while we were talking, I looked up their channel, and it looks like their last video had 1.7 million views. So they've got quite an audience.
Do they have a lot of subscribers? Because that person,
yeah, looks like about 10,000 subscribers. So.
I mean, that's great. That's basically an email list, right? I mean, it's gonna
right.
Those people are gonna, just to let that person know, those people are gonna convert at a lower clip than an email list, because YouTube isn't really at least as far as I know, little harder to have a call to action that's a monetizable call to action in YouTube video. But I mean, yeah, like an unboxing video for a prototype right at launch with that audience, if you've engaged them and gotten them excited about solving a problem for them, oh my God. And then asking them to share that video and I mean, yeah, that person's in great shape.
I think that makes a ton of sense. And I would actually add on, even on top of that, I would say, why not do like a making of video? Let people see behind the scenes, do like a whole series of videos.
Oh, for sure. I mean, there's so much you can do in between asking for feedback and then showing the prototype and launching the actual crowdfund. And I think every step of the way of building the product, they should be shooting video nonstop, right? And I think a weekly video of building a thing and then prepping the crowdfund launch would be extremely interesting to that audience, and also get them to convert at a higher percentage because they're going to be more excited about the eventual launch.
Absolutely. Cool. So last question here. Do you have any specific advice around using AdWords to promote a crowdfunding campaign?
Yeah, I do. and we learned this, I think, not the hard way, but the medium way. And that's like, don't waste your money on like general keywords for your category unless it's an extremely niche, underserved category that has.
But my product is fun. Why wouldn't I target fun?
Well, so I think a lot of people, they think, like for me, for example, our bed sheets are technically the material is called lyocell, is the technical name for it, eucalyptus lyocell, and there's like 1,000 people a month or whatever it is that search for eucalyptus lyocell bed sheets, and that's a really niche search, and so we can advertise against that, but we're not the only ones advertising against that because of the phrase sheets and bed sheets and that query. And so, like, there are companies with way more dollars in their pocket that are driving up those CPCs for what I think should be super targeted keywords, but that are being more generalized by other companies. And so I would suggest using AdWords only for brand name searches, because people will hear about you via word of mouth and other things like that. They'll see your name, they'll get an email, they'll forget about it, and then maybe when you launch, they'll Google you. So I think that for brand name searches, 100%. Use AdWords. You can point directly to the Indiegogo, or you can point to your website and then have a landing page that then drives people to the Indiegogo or the Kickstarter page. But outside of that, I wouldn't spend too much money on AdWords, because you're gonna blow through a lot of cash without a lot of conversion. But those brand name searches usually have really high conversion.
Fantastic. Well, Colin, thank you so much for all this incredible insight. This is so much value. I think that if anybody's even beginning to think about doing a crowdfunding campaign, they definitely need to listen to all the advice and ignore it at their own peril. Colin, is there anything that you want to pitch here at the end of it? Anything you want to talk about outside the or even the obvious, right?
Well, I think there's two things I'd want to pitch. One is, and I'll do one selfish and one out for somebody else. Well, there's three things. So we'll do pure altruism first. One is that, like, please donate your bed sheets to homeless shelters when you're done with them. Don't throw them away. Sheets are the number 2 most requested items at homeless shelters. Socks are number 1. If you have socks that you want to donate to. And a lot of 10 million tons of textiles get thrown away in the U.S. every single year, and bed sheets are a big part of that. So blankets, bed sheets, comforters, bring them to your local homeless shelter. Bring them to Goodwill. Don't throw them away. Especially microfiber bed sheets, which never biodegrade, which is a whole nother thing. That's really annoying. The number 2 thing I pitch is my agency that I'm using right now. He doesn't know that I'm bringing him up, so I hope it's okay. But there's a lot of sharks when it comes to crowdfunding out there, and I'd highly recommend smaller shops that will focus on you as their core client in that any given month, 2 or 3 month time period. And my agency is called Russell Marketing. It's russellmarketing.co. Will Russell is the head of that agency. Big fan of this guy. He knows his stuff. He's honest. He's on the up and up. And he'll tell you quickly, by doing the research before he ever charges you a single dollar, whether or not he thinks you got a good idea on your hands or not. And he's told some people that I've introduced him to, you don't have a good idea in your hands, which I think is valuable in and of itself.
That's the kind of harsh love that your mom won't give
you. Well,
he's
British.
Need.
He's British, so he's very polite. So
okay.
Russell, he's not going to be mean, but he'll tell it like it is. So Russell Marketing, big shout out to Will and his team.
You'll feel devastated with a smile on your face.
Yeah, exactly. Again, British guy, super nice, super polite, but he won't sugarcoat.
We'll link to them in the description.
Yeah. Anyway, just wanted to give, because a lot of people, when I say look out for sharks, they ask me, do you have a recommendation for an agency? And I always send them Will's way. And then the third thing is, I'll just pitch Sheets and Giggles for anybody still listening after that long-winded intro. We make and sell eucalyptus bed sheets. If you've never heard of eucalyptus bed sheets, don't feel bad. Nobody has. They are softer than cotton naturally as a fiber. They have literally a lower surface friction. They're more breathable than cotton, which for me as a hot sleeper is a godsend. And they're also more durable. They're more resistant to rips and tears, and they'll hold their color better and longer. On top of all that, they're also very sustainable, using about 95% less water than cotton sheets on average, and about 30% less energy, and no insecticides or pesticides. And we also have a donation program ourselves called Give 2 Sheets. A lot of pun-based stuff that we do, where we'll donate your old sheets for you to homeless shelters, and we include a return mailer for donations in every package.
That's an incredible initiative.
Yeah, so it's Sheets and Giggles. Google us. If you want some new bed sheets in your life, we're shipping our pre-orders this month, and we're still 10% off right now for the month of September for any pre-orders on our website, sheetsgiggles.com, or just Google Sheets and Giggles.
Excellent. Well, Colin, thank you so much again. Really appreciate your time. And to all you listening out there, hopefully you got an incredible amount of value out of this very smart man who's run a number of successful crowdfunding campaigns. Go out, listen to his advice, go out there, start preparing, give yourself at least 8 weeks, and happy marketing, everybody.